Beginning in 1989, most communist regimes fell, paving the way for democratic, capitalist systems. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Many believed that the North Korean regime would be next, and it was only a matter of time until its fall. However, even after the hardships of the 1990s, when the country lost its oil trading partners and Soviet assistance, in spite of economic downturn and famine, the regime has remained unshaken. How can we explain this anomaly? What made North Korea different from most other communist regimes that withered away like leaves in autumn? North Korea is an authoritarian state, but one could argue that it stands out even among other authoritarian states. After the Korean War, the first and theoretically eternal leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, carefully crafted a system in which the leader has absolute power and nobody could challenge his ideas in the slightest. Those who had different opinions on how a state should be ruled were quickly eliminated from their positions and often physically eliminated as well. Decade after decade, the propaganda strengthened the power of the leader Kim Il-sung to a point that might seem absurd to us, the rest of the world. Kim Il-sung was transformed by the communist propaganda into a divine creature who could not be replaced. When he got older, the propaganda focused on the idea of the chosen family, the Kims, who are not like any other people. This was meant to create a legal basis for his son, Kim Jong-il, to become the ruler after his father's death. After Kim Il-sung died and his son replaced him, he was proclaimed the eternal ruler. Officially, North Korea is still ruled by a dead person. Ever since the 1950s, generations of North Koreans have been inoculated with these ideas from an early age. This propaganda functioned very well in Korean society for two reasons. The communists were good at propaganda, and it also resonated with the cultural and historical heritage of the Koreans who have never been ruled democratically. Instead, they have a long tradition of being ruled by powerful leaders who acted as paternal figures for the entire nation. This explains the weird stories that we sometimes hear in the media, like when there was a flood, and people, instead of rescuing their relatives from the crumbling houses, went to get the portraits of the great leaders first. A common misconception propagated by the Western media is that the regime is mad, acting overly violent and without reason. North Korea indeed often uses unorthodox diplomatic language, insulting other countries or leaders and threatening catastrophic consequences. If we look closer at the regime's actions, I think it would be fair to conclude that this behavior is carefully planned to imitate madness. By faking irrationality, other countries behave cautiously due to fear of a costly war. But that war never came. Instead, the Kim family has patiently pursued its decade-long strategic goal, nuclear weapons. I think the revolutions of 1989, in which Eastern Communist parties fell one after another, represented an important event for the Kim dynasty. Nicolae Ceausescu, the Romanian ruler who had a great personal friendship with the Kims, was shot on live TV. It was clear for the Kim family that to remain in power, they must acquire nuclear weapons. The process has been a long one, and again, the North Koreans have proven to be shrewd, not crazy at all. They developed nuclear weapons in secret, and when discovered, threatened to start a war. Then, when tensions reached a height that bothered even their ally China, they pretended to be open to negotiations. But probably they were never sincerely open to any negotiations. The periods in which they rolled back their nuclear program were just meant to ease tensions. Because as soon as the world turned its attention to other problems, they continued where they left off. They knew that nothing offers the same security as nuclear weapons. If you ask yourself why the US didn't attack North Korea before it developed nuclear weapons and end the regime, one of the reasons is that even without nuclear weapons, North Korea is not exactly harmless. The US is separated by an ocean, but South Korea has its capital, Seoul, 50 kilometers from the border, and its northern neighbor has thousands of artillery pieces right at the border, ready to raze Seoul to the ground as soon as the war starts. North Korea also has various chemical and biological weapons and ballistic missiles capable of delivering those weapons thousands of kilometers away. While the fourth largest army in the world has mostly old equipment and would have been no match for the US military might, before succumbing to American power, they would have inflicted a lot of damage. The US also calculated against attacking North Korea because China was certainly going to oppose it. China also represents a general reason why North Korea has survived. The Chinese have at times been displeased by the North Koreans, whom they perceived as too aggressive and troublemaking. The fact that they developed nuclear weapons is also not something that China is very fond of. However, China calculated that it's better to have a rather annoying neighbor that is at least communist and generally friendly. If the North Korean regime falls, most likely South Korea would absorb the North, leading to a unified peninsula. But South Korea is pro-US and has American troops stationed in its country. This outcome would be unacceptable for China. Thus, they prefer North Korea acting as a buffer zone. North Korea is one of the most sanctioned countries in the world, and the more sanctions have been put on them, the more important China has become in keeping the Kim regime alive. At times, China provided around 90% of North Korea's imports, including essential energy imports. Without China, it's hard to imagine that the current regime would have survived. But now, since the war in Ukraine, North Korea has become a crucial supplier of military goods to Russia. We do not know exactly what the Russians are giving them in return, but it's clear that this makes the North Koreans less dependent on China. And once again, it shows that the Kim family, impersonated now by the current leader Kim Jong-un, grandson of Kim Il-sung, are ruthless but intelligent rulers.